So as the January transfer window is now right around the corner, and as January can have quite the influence on a team whether they get promoted or relegated in the Championship, I thought it was worth having one final look into the Championship promotion and relegation odds before we actually get into the January window. And then as we come out of that January window, it'll be interesting to use as a comparison point to see which clubs have seriously improved their chances and which clubs have really diminished theirs. So in today's video, we're going to be compiling the Championship table based on the current promotion and relegation odds. As always, if you're going to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. So it will probably come to a surprise to absolutely nobody that Huddersfield are currently the bang-on favourites for relegation in the Championship as things stand. It's been a pretty grim season for them up until this point. January could be a saving grace for them, but if that's not going to happen, they are looking like the most likely side at the moment to be relegated, and as of right now, the relegation odds do also echo that. 23rd place, and quite a mover in recent weeks. It's actually Rotherham United. They're not currently in the relegation zone, but they are on a pretty torrid run of form as things stand. Just one win from their last 9 Championship matches. Now, if you watched yesterday's Transfer Rumour Roundup video, we did speak about Rotherham a little bit in that video and the contract issue that they've got to sort out with Dan Barlaser. Should they lose him and one or two other of their stars in the January window, then I could see it being a really tricky end of the season for Rotherham. At the moment, they are just about keeping their head above water, but this run they're on at the moment and the amount of goals they're conceding is a cause for concern. And then coming in 22nd spot as that third team to be relegated, going off the bookies odds at the moment, we then have Blackpool. And I think the vast majority of Blackpool fans would probably agree with this one at the moment. It does seem as if they are sleepwalking into this position. Blackpool's saving grace in the first portion of the season was how many goals they could score and how clinical they could actually be from open play. That seems to have dried up recently, and while they have been keeping things somewhat tight at the back, there still seems to be a real lack of imagination within this side, and the general brand of football that they're playing probably is representative of a side in their position in the table at the moment, which is a real worry. 21st place and just avoiding the drop according to the bookies, we then have Wigan Athletic. We have seen a few glimpses of them now with the new manager Kolo Touré, and you can certainly see what he's trying to implement, a new brand of football, a little bit more attractive. What I think will be really interesting is when it really gets down to the boiling point of the season, is Touré willing to stick with those principles, or is he then going to become a little bit adaptable? If we're talking about 1 or 2 points from survival, because I really think it'll go down to the wire in at the bottom of the Championship. So yeah, some positive early signs, but Wigan are definitely in a dogfight. In 20th place at the moment, the bookies then have Hull City. Definitely a side who have quality, and Rossini is trying to put his stamp of authority onto this team. It is a team who have conceded more goals up until this point in the season than any other Championship side, albeit they have been keeping things a little bit more tight at the back recently. Just 1 goal conceded across their last 2 matches. I think they'll just about survive. I think they've got the quality in the side to go ahead and do that, but there's definitely some vulnerabilities there which could be picked upon. 19th place, we then got Bristol City, another side who just seems to be sleepwalking into this position. We spoke about them in the Championship roundup, the first time this season where we've really spoken about Bristol City in the capacity of potentially in a relegation battle. And if this current run of form continues for much longer, we'll definitely be speaking about them in that regard. They've also got a couple players who could be players of interest come the January window as well. Yesterday we spoke about Semenyo and Alex Scott as 2 potential stars who could be attracting some Premier League interest. So maybe there could be a few moving parts in there in January for Bristol City, which could have a massive influence for their second half of the season. In 18th place, the bookies then have Cardiff. Now, if you watch my updated Championship predictions video from a week or so ago, I actually had Cardiff in my bottom 3 then. There are still signs of life within this Cardiff squad. I thought they got really quite unlucky not to have won that game against Blackpool, but more of the same in terms of mistakes not being learned from, not getting that second goal. Ultimately, is there enough firepower in this Cardiff squad to beat the drop? It is one of the lowest scoring sides in the Championship as things stand. The added thing to go along with that as well is also the real hammer blow of the transfer embargo. Maybe that won't have as much of an influence on this season as it will with seasons to come, but I still think it's a factor. In the 17th, the bookies then have Reading. They've been a bit of a topsy-turvy side, really. Yeah, came back to action with that win against Coventry, then had that quite bizarre game against Birmingham, 3-2 in the end, but well beaten, I think it's fair to say, despite that late comeback in the second half. Yeah, I would agree with this sort of positioning. I think with Reading at the moment, obviously a lot of people's favourites to go down at the start of the season, but I think they're at a point now where they can sort of coast it out until the end of the season, even with what will probably be some unpredictable form. Now this next one really quite surprised me, because the bookies, going off the bookies odds currently, they've got Sunderland 16th in the Championship, which is way off where I'd personally have them. I think Sunderland are much more likely to finish in the top half of the table than they are the bottom half. I know there are some inconsistencies there, you know, it wasn't their finest performance the weekend against Hull, albeit they did snatch that draw in the end. Maybe the bookies know more than we do in terms of some transfer rumblings. You know, the future of Ross Stewart, for example, is something that's being hotly debated at the moment. But yeah, I'd be surprised if Sunderland did dip that low. I think they're quite well stocked up, actually. And it actually feels like they've been fairly kind on Stoke. They've got them up in 15th. Don't get me wrong, we have seen some signs of life in terms of what Alex Neil's trying to do, but it still feels like he is quite a way away from the final product of a Stoke squad that he's actually happy with. I know there's only about 3 or so points in it at the moment, but I personally, from this point, would be quite surprised if Stoke finished above Sunderland. But going off the bookies odds at the moment, based on promotion and relegation odds, that's how they currently see it. In 14th at the moment, the bookies then have Birmingham City. Birmingham are in the part of the table that's just so congested at the moment that a couple of wins and you absolutely fly out the league, and Birmingham themselves have really seen that. I mean, they're up in 8th at the moment after that win at the weekend. 32 points, just 2 points off the top 6. That seems absolutely crazy considering where this club was in the summer. Obviously, there are still issues going on there behind the scenes which probably do influence this position in the table by the bookies. 13th in the league, we then have my side, Preston North End. Obviously, we're up there with Birmingham at the moment, 7th in the table, just out the top 6 on goal difference. I do understand this more conservative prediction for Preston in terms of the bookies odds, though. You know, I don't think we have that squad depth or, you know, quality past that starting 11 to have a sustained bid at the top 6. January could go ahead and change that, but I think it'll probably be more than likely loan deals that we are working upon. So I'd say this is probably fair for where or whereabouts Preston are at the moment. You know, if we did manage to sort out our home form, who knows, because we have been really good on the road. Coming in 12th place, the bookies then have Luton Town, who are a bit of a tough one to read at the moment because they had that quite dramatic Nathan Jones departure with him upping and leaving for Southampton. They then had the return game, Rob Edwards' first game in charge against Middlesbrough, where, to be honest, I don't feel like we learned a great deal about that Luton side. They took the lead, then had a man sent off, and then the game at the weekend against Millwall ended up being postponed. So still feel as if Luton are a little bit of a wild card with their new manager and the fact that we've not seen much of him and that side yet. 11th place, the bookies then have Coventry, who have been such a bizarre one since the return to action, on an absolutely brilliant winning streak before the international break. They weren't conceding many chances, they weren't conceding goals, and they were being clinical in the moments that mattered most. But it's been a bit of a disaster of a return to action with that opening loss against Reading to then go ahead and bottle that 3-goal lead they had against Swansea to end up drawing that one. There is still an abundance of quality in this Coventry side, albeit I'm sure that a few of their key players will be at the centre of a lot of attention come the January window, which could influence things come the end of the season if one of those players was to leave in the January window. Coming in 10th place, we then have QPR, a side who I was actually quite impressed with on Neil Critchley's debut. They've been on a bit of a dodgy run up until that point. Obviously, it was a really good start to the season under Beale, but then the whole speculation and drama unfolded around him, and the team seemed to dip in form as a consequence of that. But Neil Critchley, experienced manager at this level, did a fine job with Blackpool, and on the first 90 minutes that I saw them in the flesh against Preston under the management of Critchley, there is every chance that they do run it close for a top 6 finish come the end of the season, albeit like a lot of the teams in and around this part of the table, it will depend on their January business, because it does still feel like they are a little bit light in those forward positions. Coming in 9th place, we then have Russell Martin, Swansea City. Yeah, I'd pretty much agree with this placing for Swansea at the moment. It does feel like one of those sides that is on the fringes of the top 6. There are still some vulnerabilities there, as we saw, particularly in that first 60 minutes or so against Coventry, but when things do click for them, they are a very good side. 8th in the table we then have Millwall, who always keep things really quite steady under Gary Rowett. Just feels like maybe they're lacking a little bit for that final spark and push into the top 6, but with Zian Fleming and some of the other players around them, if they were to have a strong January window, they could definitely catapult them up a level or two. But just feels like Millwall are just in that tier down at the moment from a top 6 finisher for whatever reason. But an absolutely massive mover in the promotion odds is West Brom. A few months ago we were speaking about them in terms of being relegation candidates with how hopeless they looked under Steve Bruce, but Carlos Corberán has come in and absolutely reinvigorated this group. They're on a brilliant winning streak at the moment, and like we were saying with a lot of these teams before, that's all it takes to go ahead and get yourself up there in the playoff picture at the moment. The Championship is such an inconsistent league that if you do manage to string together a few results, you can absolutely go ahead and do that. I still think that this West Brom side tactically does still have a ways to go in terms of until they are in that bracket of, you know, proper top 6 challenges, and maybe we'll see that with a few of the tests they've got over this Christmas break. You know, Preston travelled away to West Brom, for example. I'll be at that game. Really looking forward to seeing this West Brom side in the flesh. But in terms of quality on paper in that starting 11, yeah, there's no doubt this West Brom side are good enough. Coming in 6th place, the bookies then have Middlesbrough currently as the 6th most likely side to gain promotion come the end of this season. Honestly, I really like what I've seen from this Borough group and squad under Michael Carrick so far. Obviously in a fairly similar situation to West Brom, having that really slow start to the season under Wilder, but have picked things up since. It was probably their biggest test yet against Burnley, one in which they failed to get through in the end, but I think a lot of teams are going to find that, especially is the case at Turf Moor this season. Middlesbrough also a side who I expect to spend quite a bit of money in January as well, and that goes ahead and bumps them up into this tier for me as well. Blackburn, I just give up on really. They're an absolutely impossible side to go ahead and predict because they can go from being hopeless to miraculous in the space of just a few days. Those woeful back-to-back performances, I guess you could call it, against Burnley and then Preston after the international break, but then follow it up with that fine away performance against Norwich. This Blackburn side will be hideously inconsistent from now until the end of the season, but they will win matches, and at times when you won't expect them to as well, and in doing so do put themselves in the promotion bracket, and at the moment the bookies have them as the 5th favourites for promotion. And then from that point onwards really, it is the usual suspects. Norwich City come in 4th place. There has been quite a bit of discontent around Norwich recently. Dean Smith, is he the right man to go ahead and steer this group over the line in the second half of the season? You know, we've spoken quite length on the Championship Roundup recently about why Norwich fans are feeling this way, the numbers and the crowd dropping and the general performances that haven't been really there on the eye. But despite all that, they are in the promotion race at the moment, and whether or not that speaks to the level of Norwich, the level of the rest of the Championship, they will be in amongst this come the end of the season. I mean, no doubts about that, because the squad will go ahead and carry them up until that point, and for all of Dean Smith's faults, he has ground out a lot of results this season. 3rd in the Championship, we then have Watford as the 3rd most likely side to be promoted. Does feel as if Watford could have quite a few moving plates come the January window as well. A lot of speculation currently going on around Sarr. We'll mention that one in the next transfer rumour roundup video, but should a deal for him potentially go through, I could see certainly a few incomings also coming through the building there as well. And then really is as to be expected from this point onwards. In 2nd place, the bookies currently have Sheffield United. I'd say that's a more than fair estimation of where they currently are at this point in time. With a fully fit group, I do see Sheffield United and the team above them as quite by way and away actually the best 2 sides in the Championship. Good win for Sheffield United on Monday night. I think they'll continue to pick up those results. And then coming in 1st place as the favourites for promotion, going off the bookmakers odds as of recording, it is Burnley, and I think quite rightly so. We spoke a month or so into this season how none of us were quite sure whether or not there would be that standout Championship side this season, but I think Burnley over these last few weeks have really started to emerge as that side. The consistency within this group, the level of football they're playing at the moment, and the fact they could even go on and further strengthen this side in January as well. You know, they have the financial means to go ahead and do that. I think all of that cements Burnley as the firm favourites for promotion at the moment. moment. So as you can see to the side of me, those are the current promotion and relegation odds and how the championship table would settle out come the end of the season should all of those odds come true. Obviously, this isn't how the league table will end come the end of the season. We will have plenty of shocks in store, but it is interesting reading nonetheless. But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular championship content. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.